Good afternoon, boys and girls. We're going to talk, I know we've been discussing about bias, and part of this, to follow up to that, is an activity about a discovery. This is a bit of a mystery of a man, they called him the TollundMan mystery. What is a history detective? Well, this is who you are. Everybody can be a detective. It's all about having critical thinking skills and to be aware of bias and always pretty much question everything you want. Is it truth? Is it fact? Is it bias? What is a history detective? A history detective is someone who looks at evidence from the past. They're not like police detectives in the sense they want to catch criminals or you bring someone to justice, but history detectives, they learn from the past when they look at clues that other people leave around them. And the further we go back in the past, the much harder it is to find clues, certainly. The question is, am I a history detective? Yes. In today's lesson, you will be a history detective. You are going to investigate a murder that happened in Denmark during the Iron Age. Using primary and secondary evidence about the murder, you will attempt to work out why a man died. If you think that you are up to the challenge, then read the following information carefully, because the TollundMan is relying on you to decide who killed him and why they did it. Who was the TollundMan? Now, if we look to the left, and you see this illustration A, you'll find this man. He's sort of like in the fetal position. Clearly, you can see that the bones of his rib cage are starting to show through, and he's basically starting to decompose. As we read the article, this body was found in a peat bog on TollundMan Fen in Denmark in May 1950. So we're looking at close to 60 years ago. Two men were digging peat for burning. As they worked, they suddenly saw in the peat layer a face so fresh that they had come across a recent murder. They followed up by calling the police, and the men carefully removed the peat from the body till more of him could be seen. The man lay on his right side as if he appeared to be like he was asleep. He wasn't wearing any clothes except for a pointed skin cap and a smooth hide belt. His hair was cut very short, and around the neck was a rope noose and an iron neck ring. It was drawn tight around his neck and throat. As you can see here, there's another evidence, B. These items were not found on the TollundMan, but are similar to those around his neck. These items this one is called a rope noose, and one is called a neck ring. You can see the noose because of the string up the end. The Iron Age people buried neck rings with the dead as an offering to the spring goddess. If we look down at the scientific report, continuing on, follow the C. Certainly scientists today can do far more than they've done in the past. We have the medical technology and all kinds of chemicals that we can use to decipher how old something is. In the scientific reports, it's noted that this particular individual's heart and lungs were healthy. They had wisdom teeth had grown in. So these would generally, wisdom teeth appear in people to be roughly around 20 years of age. When they dissected his stomach, he realized that he had eaten soup at least 12 hours before he died, and the soup had been made out of seeds. Certainly this was connected with springtime. When they dug the grave, they found some plants were trapped under the body, and these plants were dated to be over 2,000 years old. Some other evidence that they used is this example here is an earth goddess. It's a spring statue that was also found in the bog. And they looked into history and they said that the German tribes used to hang traitors from trees, and they would drown the cowards using under piles of sticks. They also realized that the German tribes worshipped the goddess of spring, and every spring there was a sort of a procession or a parade. They carried this particular statue, if you note here, in part E. Afterwards, the card statue were washed by slaves, and then the slaves were sacrificed. These are the tasks that you have to complete. Questions. Who found the body? Where was the body found? And what did they find on the body? So if we go back, who found the body? Two men who were digging up peat for burning. When did they find it? They found it nearly 60 years ago in TollundMan in Denmark in May 1950. If we scroll down to the next question, what did they find on the body? Well, they found that he wasn't really dressed, was he? If we go back and we look here, they found that he wasn't wearing any clothes, and except for a pointed skin cap and a smooth hide belt. Hide meaning animal skin. And they found that there was a rope noose and a neck iron ring. Now when we go back and we look at some of the scientific reports, if you look at, we've already previously discussed this, if you look at source C, the scientific report explains why it suggests that the man did not die of old age or disease. Well, because if you looked at the report, they found that his heart and organs were healthy, and generally people around 20 years of age are going to be in strong health. Certainly he wasn't starved to death because he had recently eaten. Okay. It says to examine source B, what do you think killed the TollundMan? If we look back here, it looks like he probably was strangled, right? With either the rope noose or the neck ring, because it was drawn tight around his neck, thereby cutting off the oxygen, and he would have strangled. If we go, how long do you think the body was buried? Well, again, go back to the source. Excuse me. Oh, it's further down. They found that when they dug up the grave, there were plants. They're dated back over 2,000 years old. So he would have been buried for roughly 2,000 years. Going further, German tribes once lived in Denmark. The dead body was a German. Source D tells us that he might have been killed. And your task is to complete the following sentence. Source A suggests the man might have been killed because, do you think it was a spring ritual? German tribes worship the goddess of spring. Every spring, a cart carrying the statue of the goddess. Afterwards, the statue was washed by slaves, and then the slaves were sacrificed. So clearly he was a slave. So now look at the sources E and F. Do they suggest a different reason why he was killed? What is the reason? If you look at B and C, this looks like he strangled. C, he was a young man. So what deductions can you form? I would like you to think about this and record it in your humanities notebook. Your final assignment is to write a report of what you think happened to the TollundMan. Remember to use the evidence to back up your suggestions with information from the sources. And I would like you to use proper writing conventions as always, and anytime you're writing. You might like to use the following sentence to get you started. I think this happened to the TollundMan happened because it says in source C that he was a healthy individual and there was no evidence to suggest that he was ill. Or, in my opinion, I think he was murdered. I think this because, well, who would tie a rope and place a neck ring and pull it tight in them? Okay, so if you understand your task, I ask you to complete this assignment in your humanities notebook. Thank you.